Welcome, everyone, to episode 19 of the Intersection 4 podcast. You have your usual suspects here. You have Hamis, the investor. You have Brendan, the founder. And you have me, the philosopher that is also a founder. And now, today, we have a really interesting episode to bring to you guys. So, we usually talk about tech news, generally speaking, and ongoing events. But today, we're going to do a bit more of a timeless episode. Um, because it's really interesting that a lot of the guys that and gals and folks that are listening to our podcast usually listen to this type of content looking for tips and ideas and directionality on how to build companies, how to run a company, what are some of the challenges of running a company, and so on. And it's also interesting too that the three of us we met through a founders fellowship. That's how we all got connected. That's how we all became friends. And I mean, I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say that the beauty and the power that came from having like a connection with other founders that was outside of the bubble of the company that you were building and enabled you to basically connect with other people and share stories and check notes and compare notes and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. How do you handle this? How do you handle stress? How do you handle this and that? Is really, really valuable. And a lot of founders, either people who want to start companies or people who currently have companies, don't really have that. A lot of founders are just so immersed into what they're building that they lack this like for lack of a better word, support system or lack of exposure to other founders to be able to compare notes. And we hope to provide that a little bit more with this episode and maybe also with future episodes as well. So we're going to talk openly about some of the challenges of running companies, and what that all entails. So let's get started with you, Hamis. I have like an open question here for you. So I think over the last few I don't know years, I would say, Plutus grew quite a bit, and congrats on all the work you guys have done. And you guys went from being like a startup in the space of financial services to being like this pretty well established company managing people in a distributed in a distributed team and globally and so on. So tell me, talk to us a little bit more about these challenges of scale, right? So like you go from like being a small company, very scrappy, very lean, to like being a little bit bigger and having to establish some processes along the way. So give us an overview of that transition. What were the growing pains, if you may?
Yeah, I think the biggest kind of growing pain is just like how the leaders and just the team kind of explores and learns more about themselves. Because I always thought, as you start scaling, you start to become, more and more of a manager. You start to create this structure around you where you only speak to a few people and those people speak to everybody else. And Paul Graham and the Airbnb founder had a great piece recently about this as well, where that's where naturally a lot of people will go as their companies start scaling, but it doesn't always work, and it doesn't work for everyone's leadership style or just even the types of problems they're solving. And so I think I've gone a little back and forth on this, where the initial kind of reaction to us starting to scale was, let's create all these hierarchies and systems, and four people should talk to me, and those four people should talk to 40 people, and those 40 people should talk to everybody else. But I just don't think that things move at the pace or move in the direction that you're really looking for with that type of structure. I think that there's a big difference between, driving a boat and driving a cruise ship. And a lot of times when people graduate from driving a boat to a cruise ship, they kind of try to drive it the same way. And it's a completely different experience. So I've gone from, having my hands in everything to trying to not have my hands in everything to now actually trying to have my hands in everything again. Because I feel that that's like at the core of it, how we're going to continue to, you know, move and innovate at the pace of a much smaller company, but have the credibility and the backing of a much larger organization. And so I think the growing pains have largely come from me learning more about myself and kind of the business being steered in different directions as I figure out what actually works. And I think now we do have like a rhythm. And in 2 years, when we do another step function of growth, this rhythm will probably need to be adjusted again. But it took some time, I think, back and forth because I've been running Plutus for almost 8 years now, almost 8 to 9 years, and so it's been quite some time. And I think we've kind of oscillated back and forth, and now we have some rhythm that I'm pretty comfortable with. But it's, I think, going to change again. So my question back to both of you, because both,
I have one question
yeah,
before
yeah,
I
of
would
course.
love to dig in on one piece. If there was like an ideal way to manage a company, and there's three vectors you could assess someone: the person who's running the company, the type of company they're running, and the market conditions. Do you think there's one, two, or three of those that are leading factors of like the optimal way? Does that make sense?
I think I understand the question. I think to me, like market factors, especially like in our world, right? But all business is affected by market factors, but our business is really affected by markets,
For your
right? We,
management style, like, do you
okay.
think you would change your management style? Or let me say it differently. If you had like a godlike therapist who was able to give you the perfect indication, would they change their indication based on the person, the company, or the market? And what's like the major driver of like the correct management style at a company or most
I
effective?
I think to me at least, I think the person is the main. The type of people that you're leading are probably what define what should define the culture the most. Because, for example, right, like if you're leading a group of investors, right, like these are specialists in like different fields, they have to be led in a completely different way than if you're leading a group of lawyers, right? Like lawyers, compliance, like innovation and stuff like that in a law firm is not the highest priority, right?
Would
But
you call that the company though? Like, wouldn't that be indicative of just the type of company, not the person running the company?
but what if there's styles? Let's say within law firms, there's
Yeah.
styles, right? There's firms that are, litigation firms, and
Yeah.
innovation is like super important to them. But there's firms that are compliance or regulatory firms, and innovation is not a good idea there.
Yeah.
So I think it's like even it probably is a mix of company and person. But I think the last thing that you want to do is you don't want to run your business based off of external factors like the market. So to me, the most external of these factors is the market, then it's the industry, and then it's the person. To me, the closer you are to running your business to the most internal factors, the more unique your culture is going to be. The further you go to the right, you're kind of just going to look like everybody else, right? And that and its core is not going to give you any competitive advantage. And so if you're running a company that's been around for 50 years, you're probably already on this side of the spectrum. But if you're trying to, muscle your way into being a culture that's differentiated and can stand out, you have to be closer to this side of the spectrum where you're individually leading the person based off of their skill set and building a culture around that. And so that's what I think is probably the effective approach here. But the question that I was going to ask is I've worked very briefly in large company. I have not spent much time in large organizations. I've spent most of my time in small organizations. But both of you, probably more so Sam than even Brendan, has worked at very, very large organizations, right? And so I'd love to hear from you, like how their management style you feel is differentiated, or maybe it's not. And in those three buckets, like where you feel the culture of the company should be defined the most.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, lots of thoughts there, man. So my time at Google, and being managed at Google, and even trying to manage teams and inspire other people. Everybody says this, but it has a different flavor to it when you actually live it. But it basically feels like management styles at a bigger company are they're like you know how a lot of people say when you're interacting with a large language model, you're basically interacting with an agent that has the knowledge of the internet. It's like a similar analogy where when you're interacting with your manager at a big company, you're basically interacting with the bureaucracy and this metaphysical entity, which is the bureaucracy of a given organization, personified into a given person. And the manager can be very kind, very attentive, very thoughtful, and a very fun person to be around. But they are just a personification of that bureaucracy, and that is the case all the way up. Actually, frankly, I don't know how far up it goes, but probably up until some like senior VP level, where basically the person that you're interacting with is just a personification of the bureaucracy, and you have to be a personification of the bureaucracy for the people below you as well. Um, so breaking down this idea of bureaucracy is all about systems and processes and how things need to get done in a bigger company and so on. Um, and the way that you navigate those systems and the way that you navigate this space changes so drastically, man. And I don't think there's a bigger example of this like very drastic change of almost like you grab a frog that is hanging out in like lukewarm water and you put him in like a boiling hot pan, right? That's basically what happens when you get out of the big organization and then you go build a startup, because there's zero systems, right? And the question then becomes, well, not only there's zero systems, but there's also zero direction, and it's everything's on you, especially as a founder, right? And like everything is on you. Like when you are in this bigger entity of the organization, you can basically kind of like sit into this like moving wagon that is basically your role, and then by pure inertia of the entity that bureaucracy represents, you continue to move on and you continue to do things and you continue to go to this review cycles, and then you get a promotion and you build a career. It's just inertia, right? It's organizational inertia, and that's a way that you frankly maintain like multi-trillion-dollar businesses. But when you rip all of that inertia away, it's all on you. So for you and for your team around you, you need to basically set the philosophy and the pathway to get out of this inertia phase of like being still and start moving. And that process is very interesting to navigate. I don't know, I was very abstract with my response here, but I think that the contrast is like cannot be overstated, man. Like everything is on you. If the team fails, it's on you. If the team succeeds, it's on you. If the team is confused, it's on you. You have the full context of the vision that you're trying to accomplish. You and the founding team, right? You have the full vision of what the team is trying to accomplish. You are setting the rationality. You are basically having the hard conversations, and it's all on you. There's no hiding. And actually, I had a really good mentor in my time at Google. He's like a very experienced PM, lots of experience in big companies, small companies, very early Google employee and all that, and fantastic person. Before leaving, I had a final meeting with him, just like chatted. I was telling him what I was gonna go do and all that, and the biggest thing he told me is like, good luck, of course, you're gonna do great, all that stuff. But he told me biggest thing is that there's no more hiding. Not saying that I was hiding at Google, but like there's just no way that you can hide anymore. It's all on you. And those words impacted me so much, man, that I went home and I wrote it really big on my whiteboard. I said there were like I came into this with three things that I really wanted to keep top of mind. One is to do deep work, to cease to do shallow work, to do things that matter, and then everything is on you. If the team fails, if the team succeeds, if the team is confused, if the team is scared, it's all on you, and no more hiding. There's no way, like you can't go to the market or to your investors and then say, oh, it didn't get done, or we couldn't do this because what, dude? Because you couldn't do it, because it was all on you, because the founder failed, right? So it's all on you, and there's no way to hide. And I think it can be really scary, but it can also be really empowering as well. So long-winded answer to arrive at this at no hiding and all on you. And I think that's the biggest difference from a bigger company to a smaller one.
Small company. So, Brendan, what do you think? Is it because, yes, you were at larger companies, but they were very much in like their startup or growth, not, I wouldn't call them startup, but like their growth phases, right? So the culture must have been at least similar to what you would experience at a startup. So, what was like the biggest difference? And then, how do you think about building that culture in those three kind of categories?
Yeah. So for background, most of my tenure was at Palantir, which does a pretty decent job at creating a flat hierarchy. That team-wise, we were roughly 12 maximum on average. So it did feel pretty autonomous within a single group. I think this is also true of a lot of consulting firms because they operate on a per client basis. There has like a sense of camaraderie around a particular customer and building against that customer, which I don't think a lot of other companies get the luxury of having. So I think that definitely felt much more like a startup. Scale AI, I joined at 150, but I was the third person in the DC office. So again, felt like a startup. So I think I've always been in that space. So I wouldn't say I actually fully experienced the other side. Um, at our current company, we went from myself and one other person 9 months ago to, as of today, Silas just started and he's number eight. So quite quick. And then on top of the eight people that are full time in person, we have at least 25 vendors and another probably 15 to 20 consultants. So like there's definitely like a style of management that actually has grown, regardless of if I've like planned it or it's kind of grown on its own. So it's exciting kind of like looking back and reflecting of like, okay, that is our style, not knowing that like it was because you don't feel like you have a management style at 3 or 4, but now that we're eight plus 25 vendors and a bunch of consultants, like there's definitely a management style that's flowing through.
Question for you, Brendan. Here, a follow up. On a personal level, for you, what's been the biggest challenge of like starting to build out that team? I have like a very clear answer that I actually felt and was surprised by in feeling this, but I'm really curious to hear your thoughts first.
The hardest part about build like hiring the team or like once the team's
Not
hired.
not hire the team, but like once you go from being you and your co-founder, and then suddenly there's like eight people that report to you, or do you have to lead? What was the hardest part of like dealing with that responsibility, for lack of a better word, or like position to be in, of like you need to give the direction?
I think you have to continually remind yourself that you can say something once and it doesn't mean it's gotten through. So I think it's just repeating the same thing 20 times. And even when you're like, everyone for sure gets it. And like the three people that definitely get it will be like, dude, we talked about this. Like, I don't need another reminder. For the four people that didn't speak up, they needed it again. And like Silas's first day, I'm going to say the same thing at the next like team meeting. And they're all going to be like, okay, we've heard this before. Stop giving us the pitch again. But it'll be Silas's first time. And then next week, it'll be only his second time. So I think it's been hard to remember that each time a new person joins, they need to hear something 4 to 5 times before it really sinks in. And especially when you're like a neurotic founder, like I would put myself in the camp of like more loud, more vocal on Slack, on email. Like there's a lot of stuff flying around. You have to repeat things 10 times over for people to even recognize that, hey, we're serious when we say this. We're not in passing making a comment. It's more like, no, this is what we're doing. Like, let's all get on the train.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it goes back to the analogy I was trying to make with the boat and then the cruise ship, is that once you are driving a cruise ship, like if you want to turn the direction, like it's you can't just turn the direction. There's like this whole process that you have to go through, this whole exercise, and then slowly you turn the direction. And so if you show up one day and you say, hey, this is the top priority, you're expecting, coming from a more startup background, that okay, everybody's going to shift priorities and go in the direction you're wanting, but in reality it's just much bigger of an organization, and that it takes time for that idea to sink across and actually be driven through.
Yeah.
And so it has to be repeated again and again, not because people are not listening or not able to pick it up, but it's because you're giving them five different things, 20 different projects. You're throwing all of those things at a new person all at the same time. And they're trying to figure out which of these is like the highest importance of values. And then how do we go down from here? So I completely agree, and that's become like really challenging for me now, because it used to be this small group of people, we'd get on the same page and then stuff just moved and got done. We're like over 100 people now, and so it's like really like now I'm like, okay, if I say something, it has to be like really driven in for them to really like by the time I push a button and something happens, like the time has gone up like 10x, and it keeps going up. And so I need to find better and better ways to make
What
that
was
lag
that?
time less.
What,
Yeah.
what was yours, Sam? You said you had one that immediately came to mind.
Yeah. I have an answer on this that is like it's very real to what I'm feeling right now. Um, but let me just preface by saying that I think the answer to what's the biggest challenge of like being in a leadership position of a team, I think really depends on the person and each person. Like my challenge is very unique to me and the background and where I came from. And the same way that I think is very unique for you, Brendan and Hamis. But even before giving my answer, I'll just give like a tangential comment to what you guys were saying. I think a bigger like another way that I've been feeling this a little bit is context is I think as a founder, like you have so much context on what you're trying to do, and then there's different, like you break the context into multiple small compartments, and then the team members of the team that you build go and execute on each part of this like bigger vision, right? But oftentimes something that happens, and if you're not careful, like really easily, even if everybody's in the office at the same time in the same place talking to each other, there's compartmentalization. So people who are working on the front end, they really talk to people working in the back end, who don't talk to people working with the database structure, whatever you're building. And then suddenly there's like compartmentalized knowledge, but when everybody's in the office at the same time, because nobody really talked about this thing. So you say something, and you hope that everybody knows why this ties back into this big vision of what you're trying to do. But then suddenly you realize, oh, like half the people lost the context or missed the context, so you need to repeat things multiple times. So definitely feel that too. Um, in having like getting this energy that you have as a founder and getting your team like touched with this energy, and the desire to understand the full context and execute on it, I think is also part of this challenge too. But I think my answer to like the biggest challenge that I felt has very much to do with kind of like the very chill culture that you have at Google. Like um, maybe knowingly or unknowingly, when you're at a really big company, um, the system kind of like helps you avoid conflict. And it's really easy to like deal with conflict in a very professional way, right? It's like there's processes to deal with conflict and all that stuff. But when you're at a startup and when you're leading the team, and this has nothing to do with like being a person who's afraid of conflict. Like I don't care about conflict. I will speak up against things that I think are wrong. I will tell people that I think they're wrong to their face. Like I've never had any issues with conflict. But I think it's very different um, to when you actually lead a team, and then suddenly you need to have really hard conversations with your team. You need to go to a team member who's like executing really poorly and say, "Dude, you need to fucking wake the up, otherwise we need to let you go." Or maybe you need to actually let go of somebody and having a really hard conversation, man. It's very, very, very hard. It's very hard. And it's really interesting because the founder lore that exists out there in the tech world talks about a lot of things. Talks about how much you need to work, or how you need to like be obsessed with the product, and how you need to be obsessed with like your customers and product market fit and all the things that exist in the lore. But I've seen very few instances in the lore, the founder lore, that talk about how hard it is a to be merciless. And I think that's the word that I'm arriving at. Like you need to be merciless in the execution of what you're trying to do. And it's dude, it's very, very hard, especially if you're not used to being that merciless. And because frankly, like especially when you're working at a bigger company, you can just let go of a lot of things. Like it doesn't really matter at the end, right? It's not your it's not your company. It doesn't really matter. It's like, okay, whatever, I don't care. I'm not gonna go fight for this thing. But when it's your thing, when you're building a vision that you want to achieve, like the need to be merciless like shakes you up like really quickly from day one. And I felt that really hard. And just to wrap up the spiel here, I really thank my co-founder, man. I think I've learned so much from him. Like this is on his first bigger startup that he does. So he, in previous experiences, he learned a lot about like this mercilessness, and I'm learning a lot from that too. So like, yeah, dude, having hard conversations with your team, especially with people that you begin to care about because you're working with them every day, is hard. Harder than people make it out to be.
What do you, Brendan? Do you agree with the merciless word? Do you think it's the right style? Is it not?
I would argue I don't know the difference because I probably was always a little bit edged this way. Like I don't feel like I've had to change too much in this environment versus other environments, but I think I've also not experienced the Google like level of chill and relaxation. Like I've got getting heated arguments and really like go to bat with like a product idea at every company I've been at, or like a customer deliverable. When I'm running teams previously, it's like, hey, we gotta make this thing happen. So I haven't felt a massive difference, but there's definitely more ownership of the
Mm-hmm.
decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's been a big contrast for me. Curious on your thoughts, so Hamis, like the mercilessness
I've
for
changed quite a bit. Like, so when we got like started, I was a college student, and I thought there was a certain style that you had to, follow to be a successful founder. I was merciless to a like insane degree. Like I would scream at people and stuff like that, right? So it was like really, really extreme. And now if you talk to somebody on the team, like they won't believe that that is what used to be the case. And I think I've just come up with like some very simple kind of ways to deal with these things because we've hired some absolutely amazing people. We've hired people where there's just not a cultural fit, and we've had to let them go. And then we've invested in a lot of people that have turned out to be fantastic, right? But at first go, they weren't the right fit in the right place. And so basically the way that I think about it is if there's somebody who we brought on, they were brought on for a reason. If there's a challenge there, we put it into two buckets. Is this like a performance challenge? Is this a cultural misfit? Or is this just like, bad behavior? If it's bad behavior, that's easy, right? Nobody can, and it's provable bad behavior. It's not my opinion. It's bad behavior. It's like bad behavior. That's easy. You can be merciless there. Like there's not really a, if there's dangerous or bad behavior, you can do that. Now, if it's performance, we actually have found that with these performance things, there are chances to fix it. There's chances to reallocate that person's talent somewhere else. There's chances to invest in them more, and we have seen enough examples of that being successful that I believe in that. I believe that that can happen. But when there's simply a cultural misfit, just style misfit, we never let somebody go right off the bat. That's just a difference of their value set and our value set, their way of doing something and our way of doing something. And so in those scenarios, we let them go because long term, if our values are not aligned, it's not going to work. But we always give them, a very long transition period, and we give them a chance to, very easily transition over to another role or another opportunity. So that's how I've kind of put them in those three buckets. But you will never hear a swear word at Plutus. That never happens. You'll never hear somebody screaming. No tolerance for any of those things. And we've started to turn that around into more of like a carrot instead of a stick. And so, hey, if you finish this sprint, it's going to be an aggressive sprint. But if you finish this sprint at this time frame, like everybody gets a bonus. It used to be because you can't really lead with just like a stick for very long. After some time, the fear of the stick just like disappears, right? Because people are like, hey, I'm a senior engineer, like I don't have to be worried about the stick anymore, right? Like, and so that's when the carrot becomes just like far, far more effective. And so we found that across the board, the carrot just works even for the junior people much better than the stick. And it's a much more consistent long-term strategy as people become more senior and become more important to the firm. So that's like how we put it in the three buckets. And you can talk about this with my team, but nobody in my team today has ever heard me, other than maybe my brother, scream. That never happens.
yeah, you're also a very very relaxed person and like very very easygoing, very stoic person. So yeah, I have a hard time imagining you screaming, but I also think the need for this like mercilessness decreases as you find product market fit and the company grows and so on. Really early on, man, it's like it's so intense. The like it's a battle. You know, it's a battle every day, with you internally and with the market and with uncertainty and with your co-founders and then with the team and the team with you, and then it's just like everything is like very very high stakes
Mhm.
when you're literally starting
Like
from
one
zero.
idea there, Sam, that something that I've thought about before, and I think it's been effective, is you should be merciless like with yourself and the business. Like you should be like really critical of what you're doing. But if you've surrounded yourself with people that like really feel a connection to the business and to you, if you're merciless to yourself, like they'll get the message without you saying anything to them, right? So as an example, right, like when 2021 happened, I think it was 2021, 2022, it was the worst year we've ever had, right? Like it was just everywhere, just chaos, right? Now we could have stepped up and said, this is your fault. These are the three people that are responsible. And we would have created this environment of who's next, like who's going to go next. Instead, one thing that helped us at that time is the team could see and feel how heavy it was on us and how much we were taking responsibility for the whole thing, right? So it was more like, hey, if the engineering isn't working, yeah, sure, technically the engineering leaders are responsible, but ultimately, we're responsible, right?
No,
And if you're stepping up and saying, hey, I am the reason this isn't happening, the right person is getting the message, hey, he's taking the brunt for this, but this is really my fault, right? And I'm not saying everybody gets that message, but the right people do get that message and they do change and help, make changes. If you keep taking all the brunt for it and the person isn't getting the message, well, that's just like a cultural mismatch, right? Like they don't care about you, they don't care about the business if that's the case. But what I found, at least internally, is when we took that unnecessarily, we were just taking the brunt for everything. It the people weren't afraid; they were more like motivated. That hey, like this is like too much. Should be on me. I need to do more to be able to help here.
Yeah,
So that was
I
helpful.
agree, and I think maybe worth to make a qualification here of what I mean by being merciless. It's not about being an asshole or like yelling to people or anything like that. It's just being first starting with you, like squeezing every ounce of like possible work from yourself, and then being able to like ask the same from your team, and then send up to somebody who's not doing that and be like, dude, we need more, we need to do more, we need to do faster, we need to set expectations that like would be unreasonable if you were not at a startup. We need to do things in like much shorter time frames. Like what you're telling me that needs to be done in a month needs to be done in a week, in 2 days. There's a bunch of tools that accelerate you out there, so use those tools. That's kind of what I mean by merciless. It's like your team comes and presents something to you, and you say, "Not enough, man. We need to do more. We need to do better."
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm at me and the rest of the founding team are doing better too. That's what I mean by merciless. It's like, and if
Maybe
people
like
are not following through, then that's when you like,
yeah, maybe it's like demanding is the right word, right? Because merciless makes it sound like hey, like I don't care, like either way, like you're gonna deliver this. Demanding is not a terrible. It's a great word, right? Like it's like yeah, I'm very demanding, and everyone knows your standards are very high. You ask for this, but you're also empathetic at the same time that it's a difficult problem to solve.
yeah,
We,
So
yeah,
I think we filter for this upfront extremely well.
okay.
Or I don't know about extremely well, but this is how we filter. I'll tell you. When we interview, we say almost in the first, at least by the second interview, we say it's a 6-day in office role, and it'll be one of the most difficult experiences you ever had, but it'll be the most exciting job you've ever had as well. And people back out often because of that.
Really?
We're not actually 6 days a week in office. I would say we're definitely 5 days a week in office. We're not
Mhm.
any less than five. And we come in maybe every other weekend, and people work weekends remotely. But like we lead with this because if you're not in at that, I think a lot of the other stuff is like an easy thing
So, Brendan, people actually back out because I would expect people to just say, "Oh, he's just bluffing. I'm in." No, people
Nope,
back out. What
all
percentage? What percentage?
40%.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
wow.
That might be good, right, Sam, for both you and me. Like we should kind of say up front, hey, like this is gonna be really demanding. Like we're gonna
No, we say it, but
yeah.
but I think like, but that's the thing too that I've noticed too, man. Is like everybody says they want to work at a startup. Everybody says every engineer that you talk at a big
Yeah,
company,
that's why I was
anywhere, everybody says
wondering
yeah,
what the
But it's different
percentage
to say
was.
like, but
Yeah.
but you like quantify it by saying six
yeah,
days a week
exactly,
in office is different than like, oh, we work a lot, we work weekends. It's like no. We're 6 days a week in office.
In
You can't
yeah,
office.
like
yeah, yeah.
be wiggling a mouse. Yeah, like that. That's real. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, yeah, recently we went from letting people kind of come into the office whenever they wanted to like, no, every day we're in the office. That goes back to the mercilessness thing. It's like, yeah, like, no, like, dude, things need to get done,
But it's
and we're on
mercilessness
this
when you
together.
switch it's not merciless when you start with that.
I
That's
agree. I
why I'm
agree.
like, I don't
I
feel like
agree.
it's mercilessness because everyone signed up for this, so I'm like, this is what
Yeah.
we signed up for.
And
Versus
even
like,
yeah, even
if
having
you,
the conversation to begin with, like okay, we're not working from the office anymore. We need to come in here, and this is why, because things are not working the way that they should be, and so on and so
you know
forth.
what you find is like people like it. Like it's exciting. Like you want
Yes,
to work.
yes, that's
There's a
true.
period in your life where you want to
Yep.
like dig into like your craft, and if you're around other people doing it, if you get like a sense of like excitement from it. So it's
Yep.
like
Yep.
not demanding. It's almost like, oh my gosh, I get to work with other people that are in that point in their life where they want to just really
Yep.
like build.
Grind.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
fun.
Dude,
yeah.
it's the same thing as doing like hard physical stuff. Like if you do something that's physically hard, yeah, it sucks, man, but it's very rewarding for you and everybody around you. So totally
Mhm.
agree. And yeah, dude, I really like that idea of like really making it feel real. Because again, kind of what I was saying, everybody says that they want to work at a startup, but when push comes to shove and it's time to, yeah, dude, you have to work all day, and you have to work over the weekends and all that. Yeah, dude. But when it comes time to actually do it, most people like don't really give it their all because it's hard to see themselves in the position when you're just interviewing. When you're interviewing, you just want a job at a cool company.
Another one is if you're interviewing, try to get an interview on the weekend. Very easy proof point. Oh,
Yep,
hey,
yep,
I'm not free Friday. Are you free tomorrow? Saturday
Mhm.
morning. 15
yep.
minutes. Just can we catch up over the phone on Sunday? And if they're like, oh, no, I can do Monday. It's like, okay. If you're not able to put in a 15-minute like interview on a weekend, you're not going to be working weekends when you're hired full time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
That's good.
there's one that I've used in the past that's been successful is sometimes when I look at somebody's resume, it's like 6 months, 9 months here, they just like keep jumping around, right? And I'm like, okay, what are you looking for? Like, what if you are looking for something, tell me, and I'll see if we can get that to you. And if they give us a convincing enough answer, then the real test of it is we don't want to hire mercenaries, right? Like they're just going to go to the next 20% bump. They don't care about what we do, why we do it. And so we'll actually offer them something below what they're making right now.
Hmm.
And if they accept it and they come and they perform, we bump them up way above what they were making before. But that proof point, like if you're willing to accept a pay
Pay
cut,
cut.
that means you actually care, right? You really want to be here. And that's really helped with a bunch of people. And we'll say, hey, like if you come and perform, like we'll compensate you way better than you were getting compensated, but you got to take the leap with us.
Yep.
And that has been effective. It's hard to do, right? Because it's like the best people that you're trying to go after, you are kind of in the position you're like, I want to kind of get this person, right? It doesn't matter. But they'll self-select very, very quickly if you ask them for a pay cut. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Good.
So I think the organizations that we should really look at that do this really, really well are sports teams where there's like incredible camaraderie, but incredibly demanding of each other as well,
You think this
right?
camaraderie?
Yeah, dude, they're like, you don't think so? They're like family.
I think it looks like that, but if you look at like an F1 team,
Uh-huh.
they're ruthless to each other. They
No,
switch.
but it's different. It's a different sport.
No,
It's a different
it's
sport.
true of like a lot of sports teams as like people are free agents
No,
around. I think
no.
it looks like a team because it's called a team, but I
Uh-huh.
would argue there's a lot of camaraderie in like a 15-year Oracle vet than like people who like switch every 4 years in the NFL.
Okay, maybe, but I'm still like I think still compared to like many of these companies, people kind of feel connected to the fans and the people, and there might be camaraderie not between them but with the team overall. But I think they do have a balance, right? They have a balance of like they'll be so demanding of each other, but they still can sit down and care about each other and their families and stuff like that. And so that's one like kind of example that we try to work towards as a HR department, because it used to be like I was the HR department, right? And now we have an HR department as big as many people have companies. And so now it's like, okay, this HR department needs a vision. And so the vision that I give them, maybe I should change this now that I'm thinking about it. The vision I give them is you have to be extremely caring personally and extremely demanding professionally.
Yeah.
And like that has to be the match. And the example I give them, at least so far, is a sports team. I'm like, hey, like that's what you got to do. That's your North Star. and I
Oh.
think it works, but
Yeah,
it
I
obviously can be
think
improved.
that's a trait of like great leaders, man. Is being able to strike that balance between being very deeply caring personally, but also being very demanding at the same time. From people who are very high performers, because you filter for high performers when you're hiring, and that's a really hard balance to strike. Because if you go too on the demanding side, then you become an and nobody wants to be around you. And if you become too on the nice person side, then everybody just
People walk over
sucks.
you. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
You know, it's like a good. I think about this a lot, and I'm trying to figure out how to tie this in. But investment banking, law,
Yep,
and
yep. Boot camps.
doctors, like
Yep.
surgeons, like those are three fields you never have to ask someone to stay late. It is beyond a doubt, like inherent to the role. And I'm trying to figure out like what exactly it is. And I think it's the transparency of the work that got done. Like when you're in an operating room, there's no like, hey, did Cursor write the code and you pushed it and it was your fault versus Cursor? Like there's no like question mark around what happened, or like, you know, you're prepping the night before and you should go up on trial and you give that presentation. Like it's so clear if the work got done that I
Mm,
think like a lot of software companies, it's opaque and it's
mm,
unclear. So I think putting that in the forefront, I don't know though.
mm.
Those three fields though are interesting.
I agree, and I think it's just culture, man. It's like the culture is very real to like a very deep level. Is hardcore. Like the culture of people trying to get into that industry are like, yeah, we know it's gonna be hardcore, and I
But
think that's
not all law is like. There's law firms that don't have to be like that. There's also like financial like firms that are not like that.
No, but
yeah,
like,
but the culture of
but the
like entry
financial firms,
levels.
yeah, like entry levels for sure, right? They're just
Yeah,
a
you know, you come in
grind.
to fucking get
Yeah,
wrecked, man, and that's kind of
yeah,
what you sign up for because it's a
that's.
culture.
I
So
don't think,
it's
Brendan, though,
because they
that
sign up
they
for it.
have. Yeah, they do sign up for it, but I don't think like investment banks. I've worked at one. I don't think they care or have camaraderie. Like they might they don't care for the people personally. Like no chance. It's almost like if you don't torture your analysts and associates, like you're not doing your job. It really is like that. Like they will purposefully like call you at 3 a.m. and say, I need this by 4. Like purposefully. They don't have to.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's like you have to earn your stripes. That's what they, and
I think it
and
goes
so I
back to
think,
I
yeah.
think it goes back to what I was saying of like the bigger the bureaucracy, right? The bureaucracy is like this personification of the way that things get done at a given company. And when you're talking about some of these like bigger organizations, like the bureaucracy of like medicine or the bureaucracy of investment banking, the basic foundation layer of that bureaucracy, as opposed to being like very nice and warm and welcoming, like a big tech company, is ruthless, man. And it's just like it's institutionalized. That's mercilessness. But the cruelty, I guess, to not confuse what I was meaning by mercilessness, the cruelty is institutionalized, and I think that's a little that's different. But I don't know, maybe this like very hardcore vibe should also be part of like really early stage startups. One final comment that I would say before we wrap, man, is that I one thing that I wish more people talked about this, and I'm trying to be very mindful for myself and also for the team, that everyone should be working a lot. But I think there's two things, man, that every founder and every employee of an early stage company should be mindful of, and the founders should be giving this information to their teams. It's like doesn't matter how hard you work, man. Sleep 8 hours. Genuinely sleep the hours that your body needs. Otherwise, you're actually hurting us as opposed to actually doing meaningful because you stay up like hustling. And then have something that's gonna keep you from burning out. I don't know what the that is. If that's like crochet or if it's that's like exercise or if that's whatever, do that. And if you come to me and you were like if something not necessarily something doesn't get done like if you come to me and say hey I'm gonna either leave early now because I'm gonna go do XYZ. That is like part of my like decompression mode. I think everybody in such a high stress environment should have those two things: sleep and something that is keeping them from burning out. Especially the founders, but also really early employees at
Yeah,
startups. Because if you don't have that, man, like the
yeah,
company's collapsing from within.
yeah. No, I agree with that. I did not do that in the early days. Absolutely not. I was, and I was young, so it didn't really matter. Like you could kind of just power through it, but I wish I had. I think we would have done even better. if I had taken care of like my sleep and really protected that. So now I'm like, trying to get as much sleep, cold plunges, saunas. Like I'm trying to like catch up now on the health stuff, but I should have done this a lot earlier, I think.
I just got an 8 sleep.
Good, good, good.
Oh, have you guys tried those like magic minds? Those little uh, focus shots. Those are pretty effective too.
Are we running ads now? Is this what we're talking about?
Well, maybe they'll sponsor us if they see
We
this.
want to thank the sponsors of this video.
Yeah, 8
Yeah.
sleep and magic, whatever.
Magic mind, magic mind. Yeah.
No, yeah, generally, like health for you and your early team is very important. Otherwise, you're crumbling from within.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good. Should we wrap? Great combo, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you for the time. And I mean, yeah, if you guys like this, like if the audience like this, yeah, let us know, and we can do more like these that are not necessarily about what's going on in the tech world, but just like what are the personal struggles and stories and lessons and learnings of running different organizations of different sizes with different backgrounds.
Yeah.
So let us know. Thank
Absolutely.
you for watching, and we'll see you
Thank
in
you.
2 weeks.